Hi, everyone. Randy, do we have quorum?
Yes, we do, and we are recording.
Great. So we will call this regular meeting 1360 of the Wachusett Regional School District Committee to order. We are recording, and can we confirm, are we broadcasting on Holden TV and through YouTube?
The YouTube stream is live.
Great. Thank you, everyone. The first order of business for tonight is public hearing. I believe we have one person that is signed up for public hearing. Is Philip Grantzowitz here?
I do not have him on yet.
Okay. Is there anybody else, Barry or Randy, that signed up for public hearing?
No, that was the only one, and it came in pretty late within the last half hour.
Sure.
I just sent them the link like 10 minutes ago.
Okay. So without objection, I'd like to take one thing out of order. I believe we have a number of guests with us today who are students in the district as part of the Student Representatives Report. So without objection, I'd like to take the Students Representatives Report next and turn it over to Catherine.
All right, thank you all so much. So as a lot of you know, when I was elected, I really wanted to increase student voice in the committee. And so through social media, we've created those platforms, and a lot of the questions we were getting were about middle schoolers and ways we could better reach them or keep them informed. Stuff like that. So when November came around, I asked the principals for a few students who I could just talk to really quickly one time. And we decided that these conversations were really beneficial for both administration and for the students and for me as well. And so we decided we were going to keep those conversations going. So it went from, we had this group of students and we decided to pull them from all the schools, and it went from 5 8th grade students. Now we have 11 students from all 5 schools, and their grades 5 through 8. They're like the highlight of my week every week. I don't know many high schoolers that would choose to sit on Zoom for another hour to talk about school, and they come every month or every couple of weeks willing to talk about school. They're all just so amazing. They're engaged. They have such great ideas, positive feedback. It's amazing. I know the principals have been so helpful and are so open to all the talks and everything that comes out of it. So it's been just amazing. I'm so proud of them all. They're all amazing. But when Chair Weeks was chairing the committee, she asked me if I had any students who I thought we could highlight their achievement for. And this group was the first thing that I thought of. And so they're here to talk to tonight. They're going to introduce themselves and talk to you about some of the work that they're doing. And then we'll end through the chair with a few questions if you guys have any. So I'm going to pass it to Kenichi because I think he wanted to say a few words before we get.
I am extremely proud of this group as well. I am very happy that they stepped up to this position to help out their schools and the district as a whole. There aren't many clubs at the middle schools, and I'm really happy that these students have taken it onto themselves to improve their schools for the better of their peers. I am also excited for when they become freshmen and enter the high school, because that means then the high school will also improve as well. Thank you.
All right, so middle schoolers, I think you can take it over whenever you're ready.
We are the Middle School Student Advisory Council. We are all middle school students from across the district.
Our long-term goal is to improve middle school life, and right now we are working to reinstate middle school clubs back into our schools.
We are looking to launch an art club, a sports club, a community service club, and a diversity club. We have appointed advisors for these clubs and are looking to start them as early as the end of March.
Members of the art club, Ariel Jesner, Rachel Lee, Ms. Julie Guerin, and myself, Cassie Pinjatori, have been working hard to accomplish a goal of getting an art club started for the middle schoolers in the district. I haven't known Ms. Guerin long, but from what I can tell, she's extremely kind and patient. She's willing to help out in so many ways, especially when it comes to starting this art club. I'm so glad I've gotten the opportunity to work with her on something the two of us and other members of our group are passionate about. Currently, we're working on finding ways to advertise the club and setting up Google Classrooms. Our first meeting is scheduled for April 6th, and our overall goal for this club is to bring people who are passionate about art together and regain the socialization we have lost during the pandemic.
We plan to start up sports club to bring together students who share a love for sports. We are thinking of splitting the group into small teams to prepare for some kind of spring competition. This does pose some social distancing issues that we are currently working with middle school principals. We hope to gather more details soon. And thanks to Mr. Clark, our advisor, for helping us put together this club. He has been super patient and creative as we decide how to make this work.
The Community Service Club has been working tirelessly to get our club up and running with the assistance of Mrs. Mead, who has helped us reach our goal. We are currently designing a website that will give information to anyone who is interested in joining the club. After the club is launched, we are hoping to arrange food and clothing drives and maintain school trails and grounds. Due to the pandemic, we are currently unsure of what we will be able to do with the amount of kids that join and the tasks we are focusing on. Overall, our group is thrilled to be getting closer to starting our club and helping the community.
I'm Cassie Alberta, and I'm working with Emma Day and Hannah Palmy, who are two amazing, hardworking eighth graders. We are super excited to launch our club, the Social Justice and Diversity Club, which will hopefully bring more equality, justice, and friendliness to our schools. Our main goal is to be a safe space where kids who are of all different races, abilities, sexualities, etc., can come together with allies to express their feelings, thoughts, and experiences, and or for some help. We also plan to give brief lessons or explanations about the history of each of these diverse communities. Our first meeting is scheduled for the first Monday in April, and then continued bi-weekly from then on.
I don't see Brenna, so I can read her section of it, but Brenna was supposed to read hers. We can't wait to get these clubs off the ground. Our next project will be working to make the schools more environmentally friendly. Pause. All right, I'll keep going. We cannot wait to continue to improve our school communities, and now we will do a quick introduction of our other members so that you can learn a little bit more about us. Ariel, why don't you start?
Okay, I'm going to be introducing Akavli. Akavli is a Mountview Middle School student in 8th grade. She's in Model UN as well as student council leader. She's in Project 351. She loves to play basketball and she's very passionate about helping others. In this way, she's very inspiring and thrives to help others and is always putting everyone first. Go ahead, Akavli.
Hi, I'm Akavli, and I'm going to be introducing Ariel. Ariel is also a Mountview Middle School student in 8th grade. She's president of our school's student council and is always coming up with creative ideas. She loves making art and will unfailingly lend her support to anyone who needs it. Ariel always strives to do her best, which makes her a great role model as well as an amazing leader and an even better friend.
I'll read Brenna's next, and then Emma can go. So Emma is an 8th grader at Central Tree Middle School. Emma has been involved in library, teen advisory board, community theater, and GSA. Emma joined the middle school student advisory group to make people smile and have a safe place to talk with others and share her ideas openly. Emma's passion for fighting for equality and making the world a better place has always inspired me. She works hard in everything she does, and she is a great role model.
I'm Emma. The first person I'm going to introduce is Brenna Patnog. Brenna is an 8th grader at Central Tree Middle School. She played both soccer and basketball before the pandemic. She was a part of the student council in 6th grade. She joined because she wanted to improve our middle schools and give middle schools students an opportunity to get involved into different things. She also joined to make them smile and feel more included. She always inspires me every day about how strong and passionate she fights for things, and how easily she can make me laugh and other people around her. The next person I'm going to introduce is Hannah Palmy. Hannah Palmy is an 8th grader from Choxit. She enjoys doing field hockey, track, student council, yearbook committee, and playing the flute. She joined this committee because she has a beautiful love for helping others and making a positive impact on their lives, and always making them smile. She inspires me with how committed and fast she gets things done. She's motivated every day, and it just makes me smile.
Kylie and Toby, you're up next.
Okay, Kylie is a 5th grader at Choxit Middle School. She is in many school community clubs. She is on the Choxit Student Council and writes for the 5th grade newsletter. She is also on a dance team and learning to play the flute. She joined because she wanted to help make the school a better place.
Toby Gibson is a 6th grader at Choxit Middle School. He has been on student council for the past 2 years and enjoys helping out in school fundraisers and activities. Last year, he participated in the school's drama club. Toby also enjoys playing tennis and other sports with his siblings. He joined the student advisory group to help safely start up middle school clubs again.
Megan and Cassie.
Megan is a 6th grader at Thomas Prince School. She recently joined the Community Service Club. Although she isn't in many clubs, she spends her days filled with her favorite activities. She enjoys spending time outdoors with her dog and reading in her spare time. She is very hardworking, especially when it comes to cleaning up the environment, and for that she inspires me.
Cassie is an 8th grader at Paxton Center School. She participated in the student council for 3 years and was the vice president last year. She used to be a member of the school improvement committee as well. Cassie enjoys helping her community and volunteers at vaccine clinics in her town. In her free time, she plays basketball, rides horses, and spends time with her dog.
And last but not least, Rachel and Cassielle.
Cassielle is a 7th grader at Mount View. She inspires me by having great work ethic and always being prepared. She dances and is also in the social/justice diversity club. She joined through social media to have fun and get to know other people in the community.
Rachel goes to Thomas Prince and is an 8th grader there. She's also helping with the art club. She loves to play basketball and is in her school council. She's a really nice, hardworking student and inspires me to do so much. Rachel's principal actually recommended her for our advisory group, and she likes that she gets to be part of the community.
All right, thank you, middle schoolers. Through the chair, if anyone has any questions right now.
Does anyone have any questions for our guests? Seeing none, I want to thank you all for making time to come here today and telling us about the great things that you guys are doing and introducing one another, which I thought was a unique way to do it. Very, very cool. And I'm sure that your peers are benefiting and really appreciate the work that you folks are doing to bring some of these clubs to life. So thank you very much for that. And thank you, Catherine, for the introductions. So as we move on, and by the way, you folks may feel free to stay or drop. We will certainly understand it if you did not stay. We'll move on to the chair's opening remarks. Just a few things. Tonight we have on the agenda our budget approval and budget assessments motion. And the timing of this is important, as we've spoken about in the past. We're required to have a minimum number of days before we can pass a budget and send assessments to towns to appear on warrants for town meeting. So we've allocated the vast majority of tonight's meeting. We also have a special meeting on the agenda for tomorrow night in the event that we're not able to pass a budget tonight. In order to pass a budget, it requires 2/3 of the school committee membership. That is, we're calculating that as 15 people, so 15 affirmatives in order to pass the budget. The one other item that I'll mention is just a question about mechanics. While it's certainly in everyone's purview to offer an amendment on the floor, my observation and experience has been that in the budget process, that tends not to be a successful way of doing this. It creates the occasion for us to needing to pause, to do math. And, it's hard for us to know what 21 other people are thinking when an amendment is put onto the floor when we're dealing with the precision of numbers. So while every member certainly has that right, my suggestion and advice would be that we vote on the motion that gets presented after the administration presents it and give it an up and down vote. And if it does not pass, we take some time for feedback and give the administration an opportunity to revise it. Again, just my suggestion on how to proceed with this. With that, we'll go into the superintendent's report. Recommendations requiring action by school committee. I'll entertain a motion to accept grant funds to Dawson Elementary School in the amount of $1,000 and Wachusett Regional High School in the amount of $1,000 from the Holden Garden Club.
So moved.
Second. So moved. Second.
Daryl, do you want to speak a little bit about, we have a history with receiving grants, very generous grants from the Holden Garden Club in the past.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Dennis. Over the past several years, we've received literally thousands of dollars from this community grant, and the Holden Garden Club has just been so generous in terms of helping support programs in our schools around gardening, at the elementary, middle school, and, now the high school. So again, this is something that is, an honor to be part of. We have, a lot of thanks for those people who've put forth this kind of funding now during these challenging times. So we greatly appreciate this, and, hopeful that we'll be able to make it turn into something fantastic.
Thank you. So I'll open it for questions. I believe, Kenichi, you have a question?
Yes. Could we finish our student report? We presented the middle school students. However, the presentation for high school side was not done.
I'm sorry, Kenichi. I didn't realize you folks weren't done. So why don't we'll finish this motion, and then we'll go back and we'll do the conclusion of the student report without objection.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions on the motion that's on the table?
Yep. Mike, this is Malia.
And Malia?
Yep, sorry. I didn't really have a question. I did just want to reiterate the value of these grants. I sit on the Agriculture Commission, and we see the results of community gardens. We've had a couple of these at schools my son has attended and seen the bigger impact. I know the work the agricultural club at the high school has been doing, and it's really quite amazing the turnaround they've had in the past couple of years. They restarted and they've been doing a lot of great work up there. So I wanted to just reiterate that from that perspective, that this is a really great thing, and particularly that component I'm really very excited to see. So I appreciate the support and their grant.
Thank you, Malia. Anyone else? If nothing else, then Randy, can you call the roll?
Sure. Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Imber, yes.
Member Knowlton?
Knowlton, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbleal?
Longbleal, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Mitchell?
Mitchell, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Pantos?
Pantos, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Sullivan?
Sullivan, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
Chair Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
It was unanimous.
Great. Again, thank you to the Holden Garden Club for that generous grant to our two schools. All right, without objection, we'll go back, and my apologies, Catherine and Kenichi, to resume your student report.
I can go first. Well, first I want to thank you all for letting those middle schoolers come on. They're all amazing. And I know you guys were smiling as much as I smile every time I see them. So I'm glad that they were able to meet you all. This week we have NHS inductions at the high school. We're inducting 122 new juniors and seniors to NHS, which will make our NHS total of 260 plus. Football starts this Friday, and they're allowed to have 2 visitors, both home and away, whether it's football or cheerleading, that will all be there. Volleyball started today. This last week was the halfway point of quarter 3. Seniors 50-day countdown started last week. The school newspaper started a podcast that they've been using to highlight teachers and other events happening in the school. And then Wellness Day, which happened last Wednesday. I know I told you guys about it, but it just happened and it was so amazing. And I will hand it over to Kenichi.
Yep, so in addition to the football game, there may be a pep band. Depends on how the school responds to the wind ensemble group up at the high school. In addition to that, last Saturday, the 13th of March, juniors took the SAT. Multiple students from other schools came as well. I'd like to thank all faculty who were acted as proctors at the school and all the janitors who cleaned up for us after we took the test. There will be 2 other SATs. One is on May 8th and the other is on June 5th. Please keep an eye on College Board as the cutoff dates for those tests are roughly a month away from those proposed dates. And that is all for the student report.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Catherine or Kenichi? Okay, thank you. So again, without objection, we do have our member of the public here to speak through public hearing. Was not here when we took the public hearing section up. I'm inclined to go ahead. Again, as with all public hearings, I'd ask that members of the public may address their comments through the chair. Please limit your commentary to 2 minutes. And you may certainly feel free to submit any written portion of that to the secretary to be included in the minutes. So with that said, Philip Grantzowitz.
Yes. Hi. I'd like to address the committee with regards to the plans for reopening on April 6th. At last week's meeting, it was discussed that there was a possibility that Wednesdays would remain a half-a-day session for the kids. I'd like to strongly express my opposition to that type of approach. Our kids have been out of school now for over a year. I think they need every single full day back in school, back in that classroom at this point. I think half a day, even for the last quarter here, is a real shortchanging of them even further. I would strongly urge people to not support that approach. Also, recent research is showing that a 3-foot distance is acceptable in schools. There's a lot of research out there for those on the committee who still feel obligated to or uneasy about anything less than 6 feet. I would highly recommend that you go out there because there's a lot of information that says it is safe. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. All right, picking back up with the superintendent's report, we'll now go to the fiscal 22 budget appropriation topic and turn it over to Daryl for a presentation and update on the budget.
Great, thank you, Mike. And what I'll do is I'm going to be sharing my screen with everyone. And I'll do our presentation. So again, this is our FY22 budget presentation. We also have an update on in-person learning that we will do after the discussion and vote on the budget. So on our agenda, it includes our budget overview. We're going to talk a little bit about budget offsets, appropriation breakdown, revenues, town assessments, and then we'll do the budget calendar. So right now, we've had a few different revisions prior to even putting it out on the floor for the committee to vote on. So on the 8th of February, we were at about a 4.61% increase. That was able to come down over a few weeks because we were able to get our insurance number a little more solidified, which allowed us to then bring our budget down to about 3.8%. At the March 8th budget hearing, we were able to bring the number down to 3% as, again, we had started to get some discussions or have some discussions with the towns informally. And, you know, we knew there was some concern on their side around the increase in terms of their assessments. This evening, what we're presenting to you is a 2.8 or just basically rounded up to 2.9% increase. And the way we're able to do that, we were able to do that by including the additional use of transportation stabilization. And again, for our transportation stabilization account, we can only use that as an offset for transportation expenses only. We can't take those funds and move them from one appropriation or into another appropriation. They have to be used completely for transportation. We have our budget offsets. And again, these are our updated budget offsets. So for circuit breaker carry forward from FY21, we're bringing in about 1.5 million. For FY22, the new circuit breaker will be using close to 2.5 million. This is the transportation stabilization that I just mentioned to you. We've increased that to $1 million. Our FY22 240 grant will be using 1.5 million. And then for school lunch, we're looking to use about 150,000. So a total offset amount of $6.6 million. And then we have our appropriation breakdown. And again, this is broken down, and I'm not going through all the detail that we had gone through the past two meetings, because I feel as though we've kind of talked through those. But our salaries and stipends, we're looking at about a 2.6% increase. Our benefits and insurance is going up close to $1.9 million, and that's primarily due to the fact that we have an increase in terms of our overall health insurance amount. Our instructional support, we are lowering that a little bit. Our operations and maintenance has increased slightly. Pupil services has remained the same. Special ed tuitions, we're able to bring down a little bit. And then we have our other operating costs. Again, that's going to go up approximately $550,000. Transportation, that's being lowered by about $776,000. Then our debt service is coming down about $113,000. So the total amount between FY21 and FY22, the difference is almost $3 million, or the 2.88% increase. On the revenue side, we have our local revenues, and again, these are going to be shown as reductions to the town assessments. So what we've done is that we have our Medicaid reimbursement. We've increased that from $450 to $575. We've had some more information come back to us. We're looking for outstanding claims by service providers, and we're probably going to get more reimbursements for our transportation settlement payments that we'll be getting. Miscellaneous revenue increased from 225 or from 200 to 225, and part of that is reimbursement for our transporting Devereaux students, and it's projections based upon our receipts through December 2020. And then finally, we're increasing our excess and deficiency up to $750,000 from $450,000. And part of that is due to the fact that we still have FY20 transportation settlement money on the bottom line this year that we have to use. So we're putting that and we're combining that with the 450 to come up with 750 in terms of the overall amount that we would use for excess and deficiency to help with the town assessments. These are our state and local revenues all together. And as you can see, our Chapter 70 and our Chapter 71 transportation, both of those are down almost a combined $900 or almost $1 million. When we're looking at our Chapter 70 charter aid, that's up about $44,000. So our total state aid is down 2.84% from 21 to 22. In terms of our Medicaid interest, miscellaneous revenue, and excess and deficiency, we have a total of about $900,000 in terms of a difference between FY21 and 22. So we're going from $700,000 to $1.6 million. And total revenues for the towns, the way it's broken down, we were able to get the total amount, again, down to 2.8. And again, that doesn't necessarily tie back to each particular town. So for example, Holden is going up 1.6 million, or about 5.3%. Paxton, 376,000, or about 5.5%. Princeton, 88,000, 1.7%. Rutland, 639,000, about 4.8%. And Sterling, 174,000, 1.4%. So the total for the town is 4.29%, almost 4.3% as for an increase, or a total of $2.9 million. Again, you can see with our state aid and with our local revenue, you're really looking at a total revenue dollar increase of $2.9 million. And then we have our budget calendar. We do know that Holden, Princeton, Rutland, and Sterling have all set their town meetings. Paxton had a town meeting set for May 3rd. They're looking to probably modify that and change that date, and we're hopeful that we're going to be getting that time frame soon. And that is it for our presentation on the budget.
Thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to, I'm going to need some, need to take a look here, keep me straight on the numbers, because the numbers are not the same as they are in the agenda. So I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 22 appropriation of $105,053,279 with assessments to the member towns as follows.
Are you
$33,328,437 to Holden. Paxton, the amount of $7,220,604. Princeton, in the amount of $5,272,621. Rutland, in the amount of $13,838,325. Sterling, in the amount of $12,263,653. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thanks. So I think I had Ben and then Bob. We'll go with that. All right, motion's been made. It's been seconded. We'll open the floor for questions or comments. All right, let's start with Adam.
Can't believe I was the first one in there. I thought it was slow. I just one basic question off the top. So how much is remaining in excess and deficiency after the 750K comes out?
So through the chair, what we've done is we have a balance from FY20 that is going to be brought forward into 21. The balance from FY20, this was the encumbrance on the readiness payments to the two transportation providers. We've made one payment. There's a balance there of approximately $350,000. We are very close on making a settlement for the second provider. Those dollars hit our bottom line in 21 before we even touch FY21. So we're looking at approximately $500,000 before we touch FY21. The balance in FY20 that was certified this past December was approximately $1.4 million.
Okay, thank you.
Linda Long-Bleal.
Yes, can you explain how you're able to reduce instructional support? How are you, what did you cut from what we discussed last week? And also, I have the same question with respect to special ed tuitions.
Through the chair, we used for instructional support $250,000 in circuit breaker to offset the cost for special education contracted services.
Use $250,000 to offset the costs for the special education services, so that line item gets reduced and it gets made up for, but with circuit breaker funds. But I didn't understand your comment about instructional support. I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
Linda, that is in instructional support. That's one of the categories that's in instructional support. So that broad category includes that. Your other question, though, I think needs to be answered. If you could repeat that.
Oh, my question, I had the same question about instructional support and special ed tuitions. My understanding was that special ed tuitions were reduced. And I wanted to know how that occurred. What did we cut?
Through the chair, again, and for the full committee, the total cost for special ed tuitions as of now is approximately $7.2 million, the total cost. But we're allocating approximately 1.5 to our FY22 240 grant. We're allocating approximately 1.2 in circuit breaker carry forward from FY21, and approximately, 1.5. And for FY22 circuit breaker, we're estimating that reimbursement at approximately 2.5. So the net, the net to the general fund is what you're seeing there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Mike Pantos.
My question would be, how much of the transportation stabilization fund is being used in this budget, and what number is that out of how much available?
So through the chair, we're using approximately $1 million for FY22. In terms of how much is available, approximately 1.2, 1.3. And it was my recommendation to the superintendent that we keep at approximately $1 million. All
right, thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Bob?
So I really have two questions. Other operating costs are substantially up in terms of percentage, and I'm wondering what's driving that. And then the second question is why such a dramatic decrease in transportation for Chapter 71 funds from the state?
So through the chair for other operating costs, and we've talked about this at previous meetings, the Wachusett budget for FY21 was approved in March 9th of 2020. It was before the state's FY21 budget was finalized in late December of 20. Thus, there is a gap between the FY21 Wachusett approved budget and the final state budget approved in late December of 20. And again, these figures are taken directly from the state cherry sheet. If you look at the approved FY21 state budget and the initial FY22 state budget on the cherry sheet, you'll see that there's a variance there of approximately $17,000 or $18,000. The gap is not as great. If you look at the final state budget for 21 and the initial governor's budget for 22. I'm sorry, Bob, I apologize. Your other question, please?
Sure. Thank you for that. And so why such a dramatic decrease in transportation funds for the upcoming year, the Chapter 71 funds?
Through the chair, again, we're using approximately $1 million to offset those costs in FY22. And those $1 million have been used to also offset the transportation assessment for the towns as well.
Thank you. I have Matt next.
I have a couple of questions. It sounded like E&D increased by $300,000, and was that all due to the transportation settlement?
Through the chair, yes, it is, Matt. And again, there is one other settlement, one other contract that we're looking to settle fairly soon, and we're getting really, really close. And so that number, there'll be in addition to that number. At the end of the day, the remaining dollars from those FY20 carry forward dollars hit our bottom line for FY21.
So it sounded like the transportation settlement has to be used in its entirety. If we used $300,000, do we have an estimate as to what would be left in that?
In terms of the balance for FY20?
Yes.
There is a number out there. I'm just a little bit uncomfortable because we're still in the process of negotiating a settlement, Matt. That's all that I'm saying. Bob?
We can't discuss that number here, guys. We can't.
So just to follow up, how did, I guess a different way of asking a question is, how did we determine the $300,000? Was that because it was the settlement that we've already agreed to?
Yes, it is. Through the chair, yes, it is. That's the balance left over from the encumbrance and the payment to AA Transportation about a month ago.
So that's 100% of the balance left.
Yes.
As of now, yes.
Yeah.
And I just want to comment, and the reason why I was asking that is I think Member Pantos had asked a question on the transportation stabilization, and it sounded like there might have been 1.2 million or so, but the superintendent recommended to utilize 1 million. My concern is not the budget as a whole, Dr. McCall. My concern is the assessment to the individual towns, specifically to Rutland. And I think that the impacts of this assessment will be devastating to town and to town services. And I know that the town has done a good job of sharing that information. So my hope is that if there's an opportunity or a way to reduce those assessments further without impacting the budget in terms of what we're providing for services, I'd like to see if those opportunities do exist. And that's why I was asking the question specifically on the E&D and on the transportation stabilization.
Thank you, Matt. Just, I think it might be worth clarifying for people on this call and in this meeting that when Adam asked the question about, how much E&D would we have left? Right now, and Dan and others keep me honest, right now we have 1.4 million certified in E&D. I understand it's the administration's recommendation to put forward 750K of that 1.4 million to bring down the assessments to the towns in this budget, with the understanding that at least 300K, perhaps more, will be available at the end of this fiscal year and available to be certified in the next time we certify for E&D. Dan
That's
and,
correct,
and
Mike.
am I stating that correctly and clearly?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. All right, I got Malia.
Okay. I guess my first question was about the transportation. I think you just clarified some of it, but when I was looking at the transportation numbers, is it not also true that some of that decrease is due to the numbers and the drop in enrollment and how that's calculated, or a big chunk of it actually? So I have a concern in the back of my head that if our students are returning in the numbers we would hope them to, that is one area where the state using the counts from this year versus last year may be impacting our budget significantly and may change between now and town meetings, or whatever. That's beyond our control, but I wanted to make sure that I had that my understanding was correct, that is also a very big factor in why our transportation is less, because we spent less this year. Therefore, we have less in our starting bucket for reimbursement. Is that correct? I
Yes.
see nodding.
Yes.
Okay. So that leads to my second question. So that is one area where theoretically, if the state were to change how they calculate things, that might impact our budget in some way, although who knows what they're going to be doing. So my second question is more of a general question. Again, looking at how this falls, I think we've reduced a lot out of our budget, honestly. I mean, I would have liked to have seen the revised line item budget to ascertain that. But I think we have. But my concern is that because of the way the state does their figures, and because of the way the minimum local contribution starts, and because we've gotten home harmless, which actually hurts some of our towns, we end up with at least 2 of our towns, and I think 3 of them actually going up, and 2 of them substantially. And so I'm still concerned by the impact on those towns. So I guess my question is that, knowing a lot of this is beyond our control, but what things in the budget are areas like transportation where the state that might be impacted by things beyond our control that the state's talking about, such as numbers of enrollment changing, or other things that we don't, I don't have a whole list in front of me. I've seen a lot of things talked about, but I'm curious, just so we have an understanding of how much this might change going forward. I know the House and the Senate will change their numbers, and who knows when that will happen, hopefully on time this year. I know transportation is one area. I know if they decide to throw it all out and use the counts from last year, that will actually impact our assessments quite a bit, actually. Who knows? I don't know what discussions are going on around that. But are there other things other than those things that we're not aware of that might ultimately affect this? And if they happened in a timely manner, we could then lower our assessments at the town meetings if they happened in time, theoretically.
So I guess your question is, is there a possibility that some of the state funding could change? Definitely. And
I guess I'm just making sure I'm not missing things. Those are the things that I'm aware of off the top of my head. But as far as you guys are concerned, who've spent a lot, obviously I've spent a lot of time, but you've spent more time on the state level with what's going on. Are there other things that are being discussed that might impact this? Or considering half our committee wasn't here last year for this process, what other pieces might change that will impact the assessments between now and the town meetings that we obviously can't control, but what might?
So again, What we've seen right now, so for new members, we have the governor's budget. So the governor's budget came out at the end, the end of January. So that's really what we have to base our numbers on in terms of moving forward. We have our cherry sheet numbers through that. So that's how we create our budget. That's our starting point. How it then gets modified after that is based upon what happens when it goes through the whole process. So as we've kind of, we end up kind of moving, around back and forth as, maybe more Chapter 70 comes in, maybe less transportation money comes in. There's a push-pull that goes on as we kind of go through this process. It's not a hard science. It is, but it isn't in terms of our projections, because we really are at the whim of the state government and what they finally decide upon for either regional transportation reimbursement, circuit breaker reimbursement, Chapter 70, Chapter 71. All of those items come into play as we kind of go through this process and move forward. Dan, did you want to add anything to that?
So pretty much spot on, Darryl. Again, there may be an adjustment in the formula for Chapter 70. Maybe is the key word. Regional Chapter 71, regional transportation reimbursement. Again, we'll probably see a tweak in that, given the amendment that I'm filing in our FY20 amended EOR. In charter aid, you might see a tweak there, but those amended numbers will really drive how we then look at the bigger picture, perhaps sometime in mid to late April of this spring.
Thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Do you have any estimate? You mentioned the ER. Do you have any estimate of what that may result to us? No.
For chapter, well,
the adjustment that you're working on.
I'm sorry?
The amendment that you're working on.
So what I can share with the committee is, no, I don't have an estimate, but I do have assurance, as I had spoken to legal and I think to finance as well, that payment will have a positive impact probably in the second disbursement of regional transportation this spring. I asked the question point blank, and DESE was unwilling to give me a definitive answer because they were still waiting on EORs from other districts. I mean, here we are, the middle of March, and we still don't have our first disbursement of Chapter 71. Typically, we would have received that mid to late January at the latest.
Okay, so that will then change our transportation numbers, because next year's transportation is based on what we spent this year. So that will have a positive impact.
Yes, it will. Yep. One impact I can't project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have Ken next.
Thanks. So in terms of tonight, I would have liked to have seen us be a little bit more aggressive with the ND to lower the town assessments, but no amendments. We are voting on two things tonight, right? We're voting on the overall budget number, and then the individual town assessments. And if we come into more money between now and May 5th or whatever the first one is, we can even amend on the floor to lower the assessments. We can't raise the budget, but we can always lower the assessments. I did have a question though, and it's going to seem opposite of my saying we should have been spending more E&D. In terms of circuit breaker, you're saying next year your plan is to spend 1.5 million, give or take, in carry forward from 21 and 2.5 from your estimated 22 circuit breaker. What is the total circuit breaker that we had? What do we spend in circuit breaker this year? Is what I'm saying. Like, I want to make sure we're not building a structural deficit in the way we're using circuit breaker, right? So if you're going to use 2.5 of next year's money in circuit breaker next year, which was your round number, what do you think your total circuit breaker estimate is for next year? Will you have another 1.5 left, or is it like 4 and you're gonna have 1.5 left for next year, or how does that, if you see my question?
So through the chair, our estimated reimbursement this year is almost 3.3 million, $3,291,060. We should have a a definitive number in terms of what our for the larger group, in terms of what our potential net claims will be. Director Smith is filing an application for what they call pothole money. What is that? It's potential circuit breaker reimbursement in the current fiscal year. We may not qualify, but if nothing else, we'll have a definitive number as to what our net claims will be for the circuit breaker process that she files in early July of 21. And with that number, let's just say it's $4 million, then we can calculate, we can definitively calculate what our potential reimbursements will be based upon 65%, 75%, or more. So, and again, the state is spot on in terms of the reimbursement. So if we're looking to receive this year 3.3, we're going to get 3.3 and a slight adjustment in June. Christine, did I miss anything?
So to kind of boil that down, what I'm taking home from what you just said is that you don't have definitive numbers, but we're not spending all the you're not estimating spending all of next year's circuit breaker to the bone. Because my concern was, that we seem like if you just listen to this conversation, we're raising the budget, whatever that final number line is, but it's really a lot more than that, right? Because of using what I will call one-time money. And I just wanted to make sure all this one-time money wasn't really one-time money. Like the circuit breaker, from the answer I heard, doesn't super seem like it's one-time money. It seems like it's a revolving thing where you carry some forward and you use some, and it's probably a little bit more aggressive than usual, but it's somewhat steady state is what I'm hearing. And when they do the transportation in circuit breaker, that might help, down next year as well. But some of the using the stabilization from regional transportation, I just want us to, as a committee, be aware to some degree we are doing what our towns have been doing in the past few years. It seems like we're using a little bit of one-time money to offset an increase. If we have the same increase next year, we may be trouble, right? So we probably shouldn't be thinking about what we're adding next year. We're going to have the best we can to just kind of like stay steady with the way we seem to be proceeding.
And Ken, to your point, again, we're using, we're estimating 2.5 next year for 22 circuit breaker, but I'm still leaving a buffer there for approximately 800,000 and change. And to use my term, as we've so often said, a fluid number, but a buffer of about $800,000 between the estimated expenditure and this year's receipts. Again, Director Smith can tell you exactly, but I'm not aware of her losing any students that will hugely impact circuit breaker claim for FY22. Fair to say, Christine? Chris?
That's correct. That's correct.
And then if all the students come back too, we have to make sure we have money to educate them next year, the ones that left this year. So I'm just saying we just want to make sure we're not using too much one-time money.
Exactly.
I'll stop saying it over and over.
And we hear exactly what you're saying, Ken. That's one of the reasons why we are looking to hold on to a reasonable amount of excess and deficiency, because again, that could carry over into next year. And if we need to tap into that again next year, it might be something that we have to.
Thank you. So I had a couple questions. The first is I want to differentiate between offsets and carry forward funds. Carry forward funds being one of the types of offsets. So when we reviewed the budget on March 8th, the administration estimated that we were carrying forward $2.4 million in funds from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. You've presented tonight that you've increased the transportation revolving or the transportation carry forward number by $650,000. So a little over $3 million now in carry forward. However, the budget number was only reduced by $150,000. So can you help me square up the difference between the 650 and the 150? We've added $650,000 in transportation, but we've only reduced the budget by 150,000.
So
I believe, Dan, you sent me a note that you may have taken or you may have reduced the amount of school choice, for example.
that's correct. So one thing that we did, Mike, thank you. We added back in benefits and insurance, we added back $250,000. We were using approximately $250,000 originally to offset the cost for insurances. So we took that out. Secondly, we bumped up our circuit breaker. I think originally the number back on February 22nd I have here was 1.2. We're now at 1.5, so that's an increase of 300,000. Back on February 22nd for FY22 circuit breaker, we were looking at approximately 2.2, and now we're at almost 2.5. Transportation stabilization. Again, we're looking at a total figure of $1 million. We bumped up. Originally, we were using approximately 1.4 in our 240 grant, and now we're looking at approximately 1.5, so another $100,000 there in the 240 grant.
So again, just going back to the last budget that was presented, we've said that we've increased transportation, but it looks like we've made some reductions in other areas, so that the net, perhaps in carry forward, was 150K, not 650K. It was 650K in transportation, but not in terms of the overall carryover number of terms of funds coming from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21, correct? Okay. So next question for Daryl. I know that you've reported back to this committee that we've received feedback from a number of towns that had some real concerns about our numbers, a couple different iterations of it. For at least 3 of those towns, does the new assessment numbers allay, in your mind, do they allay their concerns? Do you think they're still going to have a problem with these levels?
I think it's going to be close, Mike, as we kind of look at these overall numbers. I know Rutland had originally said, boy, we'd really like a $700,000 number, and then the assessment came in higher from Monty Tech. So then the town manager said, no, we're actually going to have to put that toward Monty Tech. It can't come out of Wachusett. So it's going to have to come out of Wachusett, excuse me. So he wanted it around 500. Town of Holden, I think they're close. I've talked to the town of Paxton. I think they're in a better position than they were even, when we first started off. I feel like they're pretty good. Princeton and Paxton, I'm sorry, yeah, Princeton and Paxton. Those numbers are, I think, and I'm not going to say low enough because an increase is an increase, but I believe they're doable for those communities as well. I think we might have some communities push back a little bit with this, but again, when you look at the overall increases compared to those of last year, they're much lower than they were last year, and I feel as though we've really put a lot of money, as Dan mentioned and Mike, as you mentioned, back into this in order to lower the assessments and bring their overall dollar amount down while we're still maintaining our staff, keeping going. We have to keep going with what we're doing. We don't know what we're going to face in terms of the kids' learning loss, over the summer, next year, into the following year. So we really want to be careful with how low we go.
Okay. Christina Smith, can I ask you to take the virtual gavel for a moment?
Yes.
I want to make a comment, and I want to make sure that it says a member and not seeing us through the chair. I just want to be very clear about that.
Okay.
Thank you. So the comment is this: I'm having trouble supporting the budget for this reason, and the reason is I believe this is a very unusual time, but we've had a fully supported budget in fiscal 21. Our state aid came in relatively as we expected it. our expenses for COVID-related expenses were largely covered through grant funding. And I believe that we have, and I think that the administration has acknowledged that we have additional carry forward funds available that we can bring in to fiscal 22 to lower the overall assessments to the towns. And I would suggest that you can even trade off bringing over more carry forward dollars and perhaps even lowering the amount of E&D that's applied. To me, utilizing E&D is almost the last option. But I think that we've heard from at least 3 towns that the assessment levels that we're projecting even today are coming in quite a bit higher than what they've given us feedback on. And I think in this year and in these times, it's important that we have an ear towards that. So from my perspective, I think there's more that we can do in terms of carrying forward funds from fiscal year 21 to 22. I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't carry over as much as we could have. And for me, I don't feel that I can support the budget at this level. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? I have Michael, then Carl, and then Linda.
Just a comment. I'd like to speak. So I do believe Rutland was slightly, I'm under the impression that Rutland was slightly surprised because the Bay Path Vocational did come in $100,000 slightly higher than they expected. But this current budget as it stands right now will still devastate Rutland. There's been talks of having to lay off at least 3 full-time firefighters, and that ultimately affects the schools with responding to emergencies and such. So it's a very hard call for Rutland to be able to support this budget. Thank you.
Carl?
So question, I guess this is for administration at least, and I mean it's kind of a broad question that at least people can mull over as well. So building off of what Chair Dennis had mentioned in terms of keeping if we keep the top line of our budget the same, but try and utilize other resources to upfront to lower the assessments to the towns, which incurs a little bit more financial risk for us as a district, like if we tap E&D a little bit more. However, do we have a sense in terms of how much we might be extended vice, how much we might be getting down the road from the federal legislation that has just recently passed, that there's some money that's going to be working its way through to schools from that point? And so because if we pass our budget and everything's set in stone, and then in August, we get money from the federal government, we can't raise our budget, but we can adjust assessments, or it can be something that could carry over to the bottom line, so to kind of replenish E&D for the next year. But my question is that what is your sense for how much, or do you have a sense for how much more we could potentially lower the assessments, knowing that there is going to be some additional funding from the federal government coming to us at some point down the road?
So, Carl, basically what I've been told by DESE, Bill Bell at DESE, we had a conference call with the commissioner and a couple of other members of his cabinet. Basically, 2.5 times the ESSER amount, or our ESSER 1 amount, I believe, which would give us about $450,000 in terms of new stimulus money. And again, towns will get this money. So the stimulus money is $1.5 trillion. So yeah, schools get money, but towns are going to get money as well. Municipalities get money. Cities are going to get money. So they're separating the two. So that's one thing we just need to remember, is that education is not the only benefactor of this. We're actually going to be in a situation where we will be seeing a decent amount. The issue that we have, and this is something that they did bring up, is that and I believe I've talked to you about this. It's based upon Title I. That's how they're planning on doing the rollout in terms of the funds. If it wasn't based on Title I and was based purely on like the number of students you have, we would see much more money. So that's one of our issues. That's why we're seeing such a low dollar amount. Your second question around, gosh, could we tap into other things? There are definitely ways to lower how long have we been doing this? And many of you have been sitting around this table for a long time. There are ways to lower the budget, definitely. But then we have to start thinking about, okay, what will that do next year for us? How might we be in a situation where we are in need of some more funds for something that we weren't able to project out? And that's really, again, what we might be looking at. Excess and deficiency, one thing people need to understand is we can't use that as a savings account. We don't have access to those funds. So when something goes to the bottom line and goes into excess and deficiency, the only way that we can use those funds, there are two ways. One, if the towns vote to support us using them for something. So school committee makes a vote, they have to approve it at a town meeting within 45 days. Or if it's the end of the year and we're in the red, then they will actually take money out of excess and deficiency to make up the difference. Those are the two ways in which those funds can be used.
I have Linda Long-Belil.
Yes, you may have mentioned this, and my apologies if I missed it, but how much more potential carry forward money do we have?
Dan, potential carry forward money, Linda?
Yeah, more or less.
So through the chair, by making the adjustment in school choice, we've backed that out. Where potentially a little bit under 700,000 in school choice that we could be bringing forward. We brought forward last year 372,000. Where we're looking to bring forward this year's allocation. I have it here someplace. It's 300,000 and change. So just round numbers, top of my head, 672,000 plus that we could potentially bring forward now that we've backed out the 250.
And just as a reminder, we didn't decide to bring that forward in this particular budget because.
So through the chair, we backed it out because we were looking to hold on to that for unanticipated needs or services that may not be covered either in the budget or through a grant. I mean, Daryl, did I miss something there, Daryl?
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what it is. So Linda, as I just explained in terms of excess and deficiency.
Yeah.
When most school districts have school choice, that money is not allocated year by year by year into something. Right. So for years, we took the $1 million. So at one time, we had over $1 million coming into us from school choice. It would go into our health insurance. It would help pay for our health insurance. And as our numbers have come down, right now we get a little over $300,000. We're looking at that saying, that gives us a little bit of money to help us if there is a situation like a 9C cut or something else that we can't project out right now. We don't know what's going to happen in 22.
Right. Okay, and so then just following up on that, just a comment, which is that, this budget, I think you've done a lot to try to reduce the budget already and try to meet the towns where they are. And Member Mills makes the good point that if we need to, we can always lower the amount on the floor when we have more information about additional funding. And so I think there isn't a need right now to negotiate against ourselves and lower the budget more. I think we can, if need be, we can do that on the floor. So I'm inclined to support this budget. I think it's enough of a cut already. It's a much lower increase than than the typical 4% that we've increased in recent years. So.
Thank you. I have Laura, and then Bob, and then Malaya.
Thank you. Question: you mentioned, Dr. McCall, you mentioned Title I being a factor in in the funding that could come from the COVID relief bill? Am I hearing you correctly that there will be restrictions to how we can use that money?
I'm sorry, Lynn, Laura, I didn't explain it correctly. So they use the Title I formula in terms of how the money is distributed. So it's not going to have the same restraints as Title I. I believe the funds will be a little more flexible, much more flexible than Title I grant funds. Those are just very, very structured in terms of how the grant works now than how it used to be. So no, it's not the same type of thing. It's just purely based upon the Title I socioeconomic status of the district. That's how the breakdown works in terms of free and reduced lunch students and all of those things.
So I'm hearing that will determine the amount of money that we potentially receive from
Yes.
the COVID relief, but it will not have the same restrictions as the Title I. And am I understanding that there won't be restrictions placed on how we could utilize that money?
Yeah. So again, they've not come out directly. We have nothing from DESE at this stage of the game that says what we probably cannot spend it on. I'm sure there will be some restrictions. What they've already suggested is that you do not put this into people, because again, it's a one-time funding source. So you wouldn't be able to carry it over from year to year. So again, as soon as we get more information, we'll make sure that gets out to everyone.
And Dr. McCall, I believe we have to spend some of this money on extended school day or school year, those types of programs as well. So there are some restrictions already that are out there.
Thank you. 20%, and that is something, Laura, that was in the law. 20% of the funds that are shared with a community or a district have to be spent on some type of remedial program, after-school program, summer program, whatever it might be.
Thank you. Bob, next.
So I'm going to support this budget. I think we have made significant efforts to try to limit the impact on towns. We can't obviously go up later if we have more money. We can always go down and amend it, and I think it's best to be cautious. And just as a big picture, going from 60,000 feet, we have a woefully underfunded education budget as a district and have for many, many years. We need to beef up administration. It's unbelievably low in terms of the state for our central office. We still don't have full-time counselors and in our schools. There's a need for that. Again, if we had a robust staffing plan, we desperately need many more teachers in our schools. And yes, there's a facilities issue there too, but that needs to be addressed as well. So the vocational program needs to be established, and that'll pay for itself once it is, but it needs to occur. So we have tremendous needs, and to go and have a strategy that says, oh, well, let's go and use more E&D or something else like that, I think it sets us up for disaster. And why would we do that? I think that there's potentially funds that it's likely there will be significant funds that will come both to the towns themselves and some funds that will come to the district directly. And if we can offset a little more, well, that's great. But again, we ought to be looking out and doing what we need to do for our district. And I'm going to be gone in May, but this is a fight that I've been sort of the entire time I've been on the committee. It's been a real problem. And we've been tremendously underfunded. And to sort of back off and say, oh, let's get the towns down even more, it seems tremendously ill-advised, and the timing is wrong, and we're better off with a larger number. And if we can again sort of, if there's a real need to sort of offset to towns. We can do that later, but we need funds. We desperately need funds as a district. And, you know, we have made gains in terms of textbooks, and we've made some gains in terms of technology, significant gains. But we're still way behind in terms of most districts in the Commonwealth and what our towns really deserve. I mean, we ought to be funding at a level that's well above average, not at the very bottom of the state. And so, you know, to turn around and not fund this budget seems terribly misguided. I think we've made due diligence in terms of being responsible to towns to get it down and take what funds we have and use those wisely. So I'm going to vote for it, and I think any other way to approach it really would be irresponsible. It's not doing justice to the students, and they're our first responsibility. Thanks.
Thank you, Malia.
Okay. I have a couple more things that have come up. I guess my first is that I noticed, I do think this is still problematic for Holden, but I am conflicted because one thing I noticed is that even with the most recent decrease, it was less than 1%. It was less than 0.5%. The Holden assessments went up when you did that. So there are factors that, you know, we can keep reducing, but there are some factors that because of the pieces of this that are out of our control and the way the percentage of students work out are still going to be really high, unfortunately. And I'm highly conflicted by that because obviously I represent Holden and I'd like them to pass this and I understand their concerns. But when in the most recent reduction, Holden still went up a smidge. It was like 0.1% or something like that. And it's frustrating for me to see that, but I think some of that is beyond us, which is why I keep trying to figure out those pieces that are influencing that are beyond us, because I think that's really important for the public to understand. And it's frustrating when we reduce and it's still 5%. I don't know what we do with that, but they have, you know, our town has almost half the student population. So some of that is beyond our control, but it's very frustrating because I know that we've reduced this. So I wish I knew and could explain in more detail exactly what was causing that to happen so we could explain it to the public. I have a couple other questions. I believe at one point you indicated that the ESSER 2 funds were taken into account in these assessments. Is that still the case? And have the towns all indicated that they plan to use that option, or have any of the towns indicated that they do not plan to use that option?
So through the chair, we did, and for the larger group, the governor's House One budget states that regional districts may use, and there's a calculation here, may use a portion of the ESSER 2 funds to offset the increase. So just very quickly across the board, for Holden, the amount that was used was $207,782. Paxton $47,494, zero for Princeton. Rutland $77,624, and for Sterling $2,561.
Okay, so that's already factored in, and the towns have indicated they plan to utilize that.
Through the chair, we did receive notification, written notification from Holden, verbal commitment from Rutland. I can't speak to the other towns. Darryl, do you want to jump in there?
No firm commitment one way or the other, Malaya, on those.
Okay.
But that would be
the biggest ones are Holden and Rutland.
Exactly.
When you add it all together for context, which I did from the state site, it's something like $400,000 out of our $600,000 we got from the ESSER 2 grants is allocated to this amount. So it's a big chunk. On paper, it looks like we got a lot of money, but when you factor this in, it's a big chunk out of our budget when you put it all together. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that was already reflected and that they actually were planning to use it. So
through the chair, the value across the board is $335,461, $335,461.
Thank you for that. I didn't have it in front of me, but thank you for that. Still a big chunk though. So I appreciate that. And I guess my last comment is just that, well, I've a question for later and a comment. I worry about using things like school choice because, as we've said before, that is a dwindling portion of money. And I appreciate if it is a couple $100,000. I appreciate having that because there may be things like we don't know if the governor will put further restrictions on the next round of ESSER funds or whatever they call them. That was a surprise thing. It still helps our towns. It's, doesn't really matter what pot of money those funds are in, but we don't know what they plan to do. They change their mind often. So I guess in some ways I appreciate having a tiny bit of wiggle room, knowing that our school choice students are also reducing greatly. So that's my comment on that. And then my last question is, when you referred to Title I being the basis for the grants and the free and reduced lunch students being part of that, it does raise just a curiosity question. This year, we had universal free lunch. So do we know if other families, have those numbers been changing? Have they gone up? Have families actually been registering for free and reduced lunch this year, since they don't really have to? And is that something maybe just to keep an eye on? Because I suspect more families would have been eligible this year had they had to actually register, but they didn't really. So
yeah, they don't have to. And again, those numbers will not come into play with this stimulus money this year.
Okay.
So again, they're going to have to take a look at how that plays out, because that's everywhere.
Right. I was just, when you mentioned that it was based on lunch, I said, well, that's an interesting question, because I suspect that there are anecdotally quite a few families that might have registered had they been required to this year, but didn't because it wasn't necessary to get the free and reduced lunch, or because they're not in the school building. So just something to keep an eye on. Thank you.
Through the chair, I have a number here. The figure for this year is 1% of the prior year in terms of that there.
Okay. I have Scott next.
Hi, I would really hate to see the budget go lower. I've been on the committee 8 years, and the towns, doesn't surprise me, they don't want the budget to go higher. They want it always to go lower. And it's kind of surprising. I'm paying more taxes here in Holden. I know all the real estate assessments in the 5 towns have gone up. And so I know they've lost a little money in meals tax here in Holden, but I guarantee it's made up much more with the increase in taxes. But I am going to support this budget, and my 2 cents is allow it to go to the townspeople, the 5 towns. If they vote it down, they vote it down. But I think it's our job is to put forward the best budget for the students of this district.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we go to a vote? Seeing none, Randy, can you call the roll?
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Number yes.
Member Knowlton?
Knowlton, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Long-Belil?
Longueville, yes.
Member Mills? Oops, I'm so sorry. Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, no.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Mitchell?
Mitchell, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, no.
Member Pantos?
Pantos, no.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, no.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Sullivan?
Sullivan, no.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young,
Young, yes.
Chair Dennis,
Dennis votes no. Can you give us a quick tally there? I think we have 15 at least.
we have 16 yes and 6 no.
Okay. All right, so the budget is, as stated, has passed. Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is an update on the return to school plan. We'll turn it over to Daryl.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. I'm just going to present my screen again. I'll go back to the presentation. And thank you. So again, in-person planning, we have spent just a huge amount of time, yes, doing budget stuff, but also getting ready for our students to return to school at the K-8 level. And so right now, as we stand here today, all K-8 schools are going to be scheduled to reopen to full in-person learning on Monday, April 5th. As I talked to you about last week, a parent survey went out. Approximately 90% of the K-8 students will attend in person. That's the number right now. So 10%, give or take a percentage, will remain remote for the remainder of this year. About 60% of the students will be riding the bus as well. So what we're doing is we're planning to continue to focus on the effective instruction for planning support for our remote students. We have started our conversations with our teachers union. We've started our conversations with our administrators, for several weeks now, on how we're going to continue to support those students for the remaining few months of school before we get into summer. What we're also going to be doing is more information is going to come out around in-person and remote learning for all families later on this week. And we're ultimately going to be looking for families to finalize their learning model and their transportation selection by Monday, March 22nd, because we need to make sure that we have the opportunity to, arrange our classrooms correctly in terms of spacing and so forth, as well as our buses. We need to ensure that we have the proper bus schedules in play, and it does take at least a week to put those together. So again, I reviewed this with you last week, and this is just an update as to where we are right now in reference to the planning for the K-8 return. And as you can see, we've already completed much of the first, let's say the third to half of the tasks that we had in play. So this includes our meeting last week with you. We've continued to do things where we had a head custodian meeting last week where we were able to review with them all the different items that they're going to be responsible for in the building. And that was, again, second time we've had the opportunity to meet with our head custodians around returning students to school. And they've been absolutely phenomenal in terms of their responsiveness to just making sure they're going to do everything in their power to make it safe for everyone. We've had another meeting with our building principals to talk about next steps. The nurses had their final training on Binax Now testing. Director Keenan and I had our task force meeting to gain feedback from stakeholders last week. We also met with our WREA leadership last Thursday afternoon to talk about the entire process. And then, what we started to do is have those conversations around, what type of modifications might we have to take into play or might have to come into play for cohort C and how that might play out with staffing, instruction, and busing. We've had another meeting for our transportation vendor. And again, I've sent out information this past weekend. Principals have shared information, and there are some other things that we need to continue to do. We had our board of health meeting this afternoon, where we met with our boards of health and our school nurses to talk about where we're at as a community in terms of COVID-19 and how we're feeling about returning kids to school. They are feeling positive about this moving forward right now. And then we now have several other items that we will continue to have scheduled and are ongoing, including a town hall for K-8 educators that I'll be holding this Thursday afternoon from, I believe, 4:15 to 5:30. Don't quote me on that, but that's what's in my head right now. We'll have some more transportation updates and meetings just to ensure that we have everything down, especially once we have the final numbers for people deciding upon whether or not they're going to stay remote, whether or not they're going to come to school, and if they're eligible to take the bus. And again, all those different items are coming into play as we have staff meetings focused on in-person instruction. We'll have our school nurse meetings that will continue to go on. And we'll have a final Board of Health meeting on the 29th of March. We'll continue to meet with our school nurses, and we'll have our final plan sent out with the first day of full K-8 in-person learning occurring on the 5th. We also are continuing to plan our 9-12, and as you know, DESE has not come out with any recommendations around high school students at this time returning to full in-person. So again, we're trying to be ahead of this if at all possible. I did talk to the commissioner on Friday and also the associate commissioner about how that might play out. And there's still no definitive time for this right now. So, that's still a wait and see from the state level, but we're trying to just be ahead of the game. And we've, completed many of the different items that, we've also talked about in our last meeting. And these are the different items that we're now moving into this week and into next week, including, conversations around what a 9-12 plan looks like, information that's going to go out around cohort C, what we're looking at in terms of anticipated student shifts in not classes, but maybe schedules. And then ultimately, what the goal would be to have the students back on the 26th of April, which is a Monday. Again, there's no date associated with the state saying high school students have to be back. But as we've talked about this, at least we'd be able to look at the process, because I know it's something that high school students in particular are very much interested in getting back in, especially those juniors and seniors, if they have the opportunity to be in school for a little bit before they either graduate or they go off for summer vacation. That would be great. And as Catherine mentioned, there are the 50-day countdown is already starting for high school. So that's where we're at right now in terms of our reopening plan and where we're at, and I feel like we're in a pretty good place. Ultimately, we have we're going to have our vaccination site on the 17th, which is Wednesday at Naquag Elementary. We have over 700 employees who've signed up for this. That'll be going on from about 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So have a lot of volunteers helping out, have a lot of our school nurses will be involved in this the entire day. So I think it's really going to be something that is going to help everyone as we kind of go through this process of getting kids back into school. So we're really excited about it. Teachers are really excited about it, and we're looking forward to this whole process.
Thank you, Daryl. Open the floor for questions and comments. I got Matt.
Hi, Dr. McCall. Thank you for that presentation. Have we made a determination as to what the day will look like for kids? Are we going to have that hour back Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? Do we know what Wednesday is going to look like?
Yeah, so Matt, the way it's going to work, we would have the hour back on those 4 days. We're looking at Wednesdays right now because, again, one of the things is we have to take this into consideration. This is something that DESE actually mentioned in their guidance that was sent out 2 weeks ago. What we're doing with kids right now, where we have students at home, and then so teachers are working with students at home and students in front of them. That's one of the recommendations they say moving forward with this, because there could only be a handful of kids. We're looking at that carefully. We're looking at at if there are other ways to do this, but we also know there might be some planning time that's necessary for teachers to be able to do that. So that's why that Wednesday afternoon is still there, and it's something that we're looking at. Other than that, schools have to have 25 hours of in-person learning. And this is the other part of the conversation that I had with Commissioner Riley on Friday afternoon, where we went through, kind of what the exact amount of time has to be for in-person learning. And it's 25 hours in terms of in-person coming in. So we would still be able to get that in if we took the 2.5 hours off of a Wednesday. But again, we're looking at that carefully, and Bob and I will be talking about that tomorrow. We wanted to get the budget stuff through tonight and, go through that process. And then this is really the next item on our agenda.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I saw the timeline asking parents to make a decision by the 22nd, which is a week from today. When do you think you'll have a definitive answer on that for the community and for the teachers and for us?
Probably later this week, Matt. Actually, it'll definitely be later this week. That way people can make a decision based upon that.
Okay, thank you.
Linda Longbloom.
And what is the current thinking about the kids who are going to be remote, keeping their current teachers?
So, yeah, Linda, that's current thinking. That's a strong possibility. But again, one of the things that we want to look at is the option of if a teacher has 24 students in a second grade class and another teacher has 24 students in a second grade class, 3 are remote here, 1's remote over here, we'd probably look at taking that one student from that one remote and bringing them into another classroom, just so they would have the capacity to be together. We're looking at how that would play out. It does require us to look at numbers and spacing and everything else like that right now. So that's the next item that's on our agenda.
So when you say you'd think about bringing them over, you would combine them with the other 3 that are also remote into the same classroom with the teacher who's got the 23 or whatever in person, or a separate group altogether?
It would probably be the combined in person, so that way they would have, and part of it comes down to looking at the numbers of kids in the classrooms. Mm-hmm. So it's all conjecture right now in terms of in how I'm explaining this, but ultimately what I'm looking at would be having maybe a group of students that rather than one student in the classroom, where 20 kids in the classroom and one student that's remote. Not sure how that would play out. And again, that's one of the things that we talked about with the teachers the other day. And if there's a way for us to work around that, that's what we'd like to look at.
I mean, it seems to me that the child who's remote would benefit most from staying in their class than they would with their same teacher. Then they would benefit from being with 3 other kids who are also in remote. I mean, that's my thought. What's your thinking about that?
Well, and again, part of it comes down to the teacher and having one student or having 3 or 4 students. So perhaps one of the things that could happen is if they were to merge, because again, as we've talked about this, there has to be some flexibility with how that works out with students that have to remain home for whatever reason. Right. So what we would do is just have that student, again, have the capacity to be there. The teacher could be working with 3 or 4 students. My concern is you might have some students that feel uncomfortable being the only one.
Okay.
And, yes, they're remote, but all of their classmates would be in person. So
okay, all right, that's
something
helpful.
we have to take into consideration.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. That's a good question.
Thank you. I have Mike Pentos.
Thank you. Dr. McCall, will the school committee be able to observe the meeting with educators for K through 8 at the town hall?
Not typically, Mike. It's just a meeting with the teachers union that we have open. I haven't thought about that.
All right, thank you.
Melissa?
Hi. Linda answered one of my questions, asked one of my questions, sorry. The other one I was wondering about, will the remote model look similar to how it runs now, or is it going to be a different amount of hours on face-to-face with the teacher? I know it's in planning right now, but
yeah, it's in the planning, Melissa. So I don't want to, lock into something. So again, remember we had the 35 and 40 hour requirements based upon the commissioner's original move for SLT for student learning time. So one of the things we're looking at is that in reference to the 25 hours. So I think there's still the opportunity for us to get some more clarification on that, but we'd like it to look as similar to what it currently looks like now as possible. in terms of the time.
And I just kind of worry because I know right now there's only half the kids in each class, but once there's all the kids, I know it's going to take longer to get off the buses and sanitize, and
Yes.
everything's going to be a lot more time. So I'm concerned with how much time the remote kids are actually going to have face to face with the teacher now.
Right.
And then to mimic Linda, switching teachers, 3 months, just about 3 months left to school. I'm concerned about that also if, they have a rapport with their teacher, and I would hate to see them with a different one, just a couple months left to go. So yeah, I just really want to point that out.
No, I hear you.
And thanks so much.
I am Malaya next.
Couple things, but I saw Linda had a question related to that. Can I let Linda ask that? Mine's on a different topic. I don't want to. I can do whatever you want. I just noticed that it was related, and mine's completely different.
Yeah, Malaya, you have the floor.
Okay. All right. So one thing I wanted to ask about is I have heard discussions about snacks and mask breaks and possibly the lack thereof. I'm sure that's a detail that you're still planning, but I've heard it from various groups of people in our community. So I'm curious if you could speak to where those discussions are, because it's a very real concern I'm hearing from families.
Oh, completely. And again, this is, I think, one of the issues that we're facing is how snack works, and how a mask break is going to work in terms of the spacing. Because once you go down, as we've talked about, from 6 and or 5, 4, 3, all the way to 3, you have to make sure that mask is on at all times. So one of the things we're looking at is having students go out into the either a pod or outside for during recess or whatever it is, to have the snack breaks that are kind of built into their day. So that's going to look a little different in every single building. So for example, you have a building like Glenwood that has absolutely gigantic pods. So they have 6 classrooms around a pod that could feed in and say, okay, kids are going to go out and have their snack for 10 minutes in the pod, classroom A, and then classroom B will come in. So those are all, again, we have the larger kind of 40,000 view of that, but the ground level view at the building level is going to look different. I know when we talked to the teachers about this the other day, some of the teachers were like, I don't even know how we're going to do snack. Snack's going to be really tough. Yeah, snack's going to be tough. But again, I would hate to keep kids out of school because we can't get a snack in at 10 in the morning.
I understand that. I'm just relaying the concern, and I hope that might be included in some of the information you're sharing with them, because I have heard a couple different things coming, and they've said it's come directly from their building. So they're hearing different things about what will be allowed or won't, and it's causing some concern. I know some people who've said they may change their mind based on if their first grader has to be in a mask with no snack break all day, they may change their mind. So it's just something I think we need to be providing to them before the final deadline so that they are clear on what their child's experience will be. I was curious if the teachers had weighed in on the question you just raised about changing teachers, because I can see both sides of that, but I also, obviously, we had concerns about that in October, and I have more concerns now that they built a community with their teachers, but I also understand the prospect of remote learners feeling like the only one in their class, and that can have other effects. Have the teachers weighed in on what they think would be the best solution, or have we asked them?
So we started our conversation with them last Thursday, and again, I'll hold the town hall on this coming Thursday. So I'll probably hear a lot more about their thoughts or concerns or maybe ideas about how that might work. So nothing definitive, Malaya.
Okay, and I have a process question and a topical question. I know you just talked about the testing we do have. Do we have any update on the process towards pooled testing, which is the ultimate goal that we started on that path? And when the DESE stops paying for the current testing, do we have a plan for how the pooled testing is going to happen, or if it is, or if we're just going to stick with what we have? That's something I did not see reflected in your opening guideline. And I know the DESE and the current testing ends in, I think, mid-April. So what is the plan going forward for that?
So we just ended up getting all the Binex testing in the entire process done as of the end of last week. So Director Keenan did have the opportunity to sit in on a pooled testing webinar from DESE Friday afternoon. And we're going to be going through that tomorrow and just kind of talking about the process, how it would work, if it could work. Again, it's very labor intensive. So one of the things we're doing is we're reaching out to a few different places to see how it is working and what the expectations are, especially from the community. I know, as we kind of go through this process of getting kids back in, if there's a way for us to, ensure that there's one more level of safety, that'd be great. Again, it's kind of it's still up in the air in terms of the next step because we literally just finished the Binex.
Appreciate the update, though. I did know because the commissioner, if you listen to him, it's happening in all schools for the rest of the year. So
yeah.
I really just wanted to clarify that. Where we
Not even half the schools in the state are doing this right now. So it's
okay. And my last question is procedural. Will the school committee have to approve whatever new plan we are going forward with? Any requests for waivers that we might be making for Wednesdays or any others that you're considering? And will we have to approve a new MOU because obviously it's a whole new learning model than we have now?
So again, in terms of the learning hours, moving to K-8, it's 25 hours, as I said earlier. So if we have our 25 hours of in-person learning a week, we do not need a waiver. We're all set and ready to go. And I talked directly to the Associate Commissioner about that on Friday afternoon, Rob Curtin. So no need for a vote by school committee because, again, we're following what DESE has put out there. In terms of MOU, we would be we're going through a process associated with what the state is saying we need to do. So we're following through with that process at this time.
Okay, that wasn't clear actually.
But we're working with the teachers union. Let's just say that.
Okay, I guess I'll keep an eye on that because that's a question outstanding. It's not very clear and it is a change in their employment contract that we currently have. So I'll let you sort that out, but I may ask that again. Do we have to approve any formal plan that you're creating or moving forward with at some point?
Nope. Okay. I asked the associate commissioner that exact question on Friday, and no.
Okay, thank you.
I have Sherry next.
To go back to Linda's point about possibly changing teachers for remote kids and to Melissa's point about making sure that they have enough teacher face time, I do think that kids need to stay with their teachers at this point, especially because now that we've gone down to a 3-foot distance in many of the schools, we're going to have a lot more close contacts. And once we do, what are we going to do with those kids? We can't just lump them in with the rest of the remote kids. That'll be too many. So they're going to need to stay with their existing teacher. So that teacher is going to have to keep some kind of remote platform going. So I don't see a great benefit in combining those remote kids right now. I do understand that, nobody wants to be the only one, but they're not going to be. I mean, I just don't see how that would happen. The other thing I just want to say is I do encourage the push to 9 to 12. I think that it's important for them, and I hope that we do it with or without DESE's direction and the start date. I think that the date of the 26th makes a ton of sense after vacation and a great way to finish off the year for them.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. And I can tell you, DESE's return date for middle school students is actually Wednesday the 28th, which is just, I don't understand why it's even that time. And there's no return date for high school at this time. So I agree. And thank you, the other part of, and thank you for bringing that other part up, the aspect of close contacts and, having 7 or 8 students who have to be remote. That's definitely something that we're going to have to be paying attention to because teachers will, and that's the expectation from DESE, if students are close contacts and they're home, they're not just sick, they have to participate. So we'll be doing what we're doing right now.
Thank you. Carl next.
All right, so a question, actually, well, so I have a couple questions, and they're kind of really, especially as we're looking forward to having a lot more students in our building. So it's really a follow-up kind of based off of the outbreak that we had at Dawson earlier, with where we ended up with a third of our staff out, multiple reported cases of in-school transmission, which is absolutely not what we're looking to do. And so my two questions are, the first question was, what did we determine to be the proximate cause of that outbreak? And then our second question is, what modifications, what changes to our procedures have we put in place since then to drive the probability of another outbreak happening even further down?
So, yeah, and again, Carl, I mean, I can go through that. Gosh, I'm just trying to think. I mean, in terms of the, outbreak, much of what happened was close contacts, more than anything, in all honesty. So that's how it really broke down. That's why we know when we do bring students back, it's going to look an awful lot like that. A lot of the other cases that were brought in weren't tied back to the school. They were tied back to outside of school. But then even that became, those people were close contacts. So it was, a lot of it was timing. A lot of it was how we kind of, unfortunately, we had one cluster of close contacts, and that was an entire class. So that's really how that played out. How we've kind of moved forward with it, and it's going to look an awful lot like what we do now. Chris, I'll get you in a sec. So as we kind of move forward with this, we just want to ensure that we're paying attention to where kids are sitting, because the assigned seat piece is a very important part. I know it's more challenging in the lower elementary levels, but it's definitely something that we're focusing on. We're also looking at ensuring that we have all of the different types of processes in place in terms of having students or staff, if they're not feeling well, they go to the nurse. They're immediately kind of in that COVID room, and we go through the whole process of ensuring that now that we have the Binax test, we can do that right then and there. So there are other things that we'll be able to kind of deal with the issues if those types of things arise. But again, nothing. I can't sit here today and say, an outbreak's not going to happen, or we're not going to have a group of students get this, because I can't guarantee that. No one can guarantee that anywhere. But we can take all the mitigation efforts that we put into play and really make sure that those are fully executed in all of the buildings on a very regular basis. Chris, did you want to add something?
Yes, I did, Dr. McCall, thanks. I just wanted to say that we did do a really deep dive into what was happening at Dawson and really understanding the close contact situation. And I just wanted to support what Dr. McCall was saying in terms of the mitigation strategies, but also to just suggest that some of what we discovered is related to students that we can't necessarily disclose through school committee. And so I don't want it to seem vague, but at the same time, I want to be clear that, we're in a public forum and we're discussing as much as we possibly can. The mitigation strategies are in place, and we analyze that situation very carefully to understand how to do things better, if you will. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I guess that is really kind of more what I was hoping to hear, that with what happened, you guys took a look at it, kind of combed it over, looked for, and found some things that you could kind of refine and kind of do a little bit differently. So again, you're not gonna be able to drive things down to zero, but if you looked at it and you're like, oh, based on what we saw, we can make a few changes here that will make things go a little bit better, then that's moving us in a positive direction. Better direction, maybe positive is not the right adjective for this, but you get that idea.
Thanks, Carl. I have Laura next.
Thank you. So I guess to follow up with what Member Artmar was speaking about, my question is not necessarily about mitigation measures, but more about capacity to conduct the contact tracing. At our last meeting, I asked you if we could scale up our contact tracing measures with the number of people that would be entering our building when it opens. And I heard a yes, that we could in fact scale up. However, on December 12th, at a facilities and security subcommittee meeting, there was an answer of no, that it couldn't be scaled up. And so I'm just trying to understand what changed between December and today, or at the time of our last meeting. What changed in terms of our capacity to do effective contact tracing? What has changed essentially?
Sure. So definitely in December, really tough because we didn't have the kids back in the building yet. So we were only dealing with a small number of kids that were in the building at the time. Since that time, we're now we have half of our kids coming into the building basically at all times. So we've kind of we understand the process much more than we did at that time. Staff understand it, principals understand it, nurses understand it. We have a better understanding in the central office world. So when we're dealing with it, it's again, December we spent hours upon hours going through these, looking at close contacts, and we have spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet when we would do these meetings. Saturday nights, Sunday nights, it didn't matter. We were doing them all the time. And as we kind of went through this process, we were able to, cull down the important parts, focus on certain areas that we knew that's what we could focus on. And I feel as though we really have the process down. Director Keenan has been instrumental in this. So, Brennan, I don't know if you want to throw anything in on that.
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned, Daryl, about the being on the other side of the learning curve is definitely a factor. We are declining cases in the area. They continue to come down. Back in December and January, there were a couple days where we had almost 6,000 cases in Massachusetts. So that's a factor. And then also having staff with the option of vaccination coming up. So those are three factors that are making that more manageable now. And we also do have a contingency plan in place too, where our sub nurses could provide back-end support on contact tracing as we come back. So that's already something we're discussing.
Thanks, Brendan.
So I'm hearing the process has gotten more efficient, and we have some additional people who can step in to provide that kind of support if needed. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yes.
Okay, I have another one more an observation, if I may, and then a question regarding that, and it has to do with how we service our remote students. As you know, I teach in another district, and I have seen students changing models between a hybrid model and a remote model effectively all year. Students have chosen to go from one model and change teachers to another. And I have felt, anecdotally, I can offer that it has felt just like any other student moving into a district and changing teachers mid-year. Students I have found to be highly adaptable and rising to the challenges. And so I just offer that up as an alternative piece of information to some of the hesitation that I'm hearing about students having to change classes. I think it's different when there's an option versus a mandate. So I'll just leave it at that. But I do wish that the district take a hard look at maintaining the capacity to do the streaming for classrooms so that we can service our quarantined children within the district who have to do quarantining. I think that that's an essential, we're geared up for it. I think it's essential service. And I think that should we should try and maintain that. And then I also would offer to focus on the quality of the FaceTime that students are getting in being in remote What is that quality experience? Is it staying with the same teacher? Is it moving to a different teacher who can, who can better service kids in a remote setting? I would offer us to think about the quality of the experience for our students, and it may be different student by student depending on their social emotional well-being. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have Asima next.
So I'm going to go back to what Linda brought up in terms of remote students. I'm really concerned about, I know we had a survey going out trying to figure out how many students are going to be remote. You said about 10% has come back saying that they're going to be remote. The question I have is we're not giving all the parents all the information. It's been mentioned that, you're thinking of changing teachers, you're thinking of changing maybe by subject. I'm not quite sure. I'm not understanding exactly what is changing. So what I am afraid of is we're asking parents to make decisions without full knowledge of how their child is going to be affected. If a parent chooses remote, I'm assuming they're basing it on the fact that their schedule, the teachers are going to remain the same. If anything changes, I would suggest if there's any way we can redo that survey, ask the parents with the appropriate information so that we're not coming back in a week or two when 90% of students are coming back and those 10% of remote students are saying and parents are saying, we didn't know that this was the case and we want to revert now. And then we only have about a few weeks left of school. By the time we get those kids to actually choose the correct choice per se, I don't know what else words to use, we're going to be giving them a couple of weeks of what they really wanted. So I'm a little concerned about changing this midstream so late in the year and not giving enough information for those parents that have remote students and have opted for remote. So just wanted to reiterate some of the concerns that have been mentioned.
Yeah, thank you, Asma. And Director Sklar, can you talk a little bit about the survey?
Yes. So just as far as, redoing the survey or whatever, the way we have that set up, it's in PowerSchool in the parent portal. And as we provide information to parents, more details this week on what to expect for in-person and remote learning, they can go right back into the same survey, change their selections if they want to. So basically we'll be telling them at a certain point, if what you selected is good, leave it alone. If you want to make any changes, go ahead back in and do that. And then we can, based on the survey, we did provide a not sure option for parents. So we can contact the specific parents that chose not sure and ask them to, go back in and make a choice. So that's all planned.
Yeah, I'd just like to request that parents know exactly when they have to ultimately make that decision. I understand you're using this as metrics to decide how we're going to open schools, what space we have, et cetera, et cetera. But at some point, I just want to make sure we're giving them all the information possible and then finally asking them to make a final decision and at least reminding them of it.
Yes. And go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Daryl. So just because I think it's timely to this conversation. So we have another school committee meeting scheduled for March 29th. I believe it's your intention to share the finalized details of what the return to school plan, not the task plan, but the actual return to school fully baked details are going to be, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so then I think Asma's question is, once that information is understood, will parents have the opportunity to update their decisions based on that information?
They will.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Jeffrey next.
So I'll preface this by saying I know it's preliminary and there's a lot to be worked on, but I'm just have some questions about Wednesdays. Well, I guess the week in general, you said it was 25 hours, and you would see that we get the 25 hours with a half day on Wednesday. Is that correct? And I'm just
yeah
looking at, say, Glenwood's hours, 9:10 to say 2:30. So I know you're just beginning this plan, but I'm trying to understand that before we get to the 29th.
Yeah, so what'll happen, Jeff, is that 9:10 to 10 to 2:30 time, that includes the hour each day that that they're going home early. So we would revert back to our typical year time, which is where those extra hours would come in.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question.
All right, going back to Linda Long-Bleal.
Yes, very quickly. I know you're going to have a million logistics to deal with, but if the example you outlined where there's one student who's remote and there's another class that that student could be transferred into comes to pass, my thought is that the ideal option would be to give that family, the family of the one student, the option of either staying with the teacher they've had as the one student, potentially joined by others, as Sherry Haber pointed out, but potentially also as just one student, or to transfer to a different teacher. I think that they should have that choice, if at all possible. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Definitely look at that.
Going back to Mike.
Thank you. I have just a couple clarifications and a comment. One is, can you clarify, so the Binex testing, that is the rapid test, not pool testing, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And is that being used in the school currently?
It's ready to go now. I don't know if it's been used yet, but I think today was the first day it could have been used.
Okay. Is that for, under what circumstances is that used right now?
Someone that's exhibiting symptoms.
Okay,
And it
thank
could
you.
be student and or staff.
And I'd like to kind of review, and maybe Rob Burlow could speak to this. I know we spoke at our last facilities and subcommittee meeting. What's shown on the dashboard is assumes in-school transmissions. There's no way to completely confirm that it's an in-school transmission. This is assumed based on context and what's been happening with contact tracing.
Correct.
The last thing I have is I'd like to echo member Christenbaum's concern about quality of education when it comes to moving. A bunch of people mentioned with whether keeping your teacher if a child is to stay remote. I don't want to push any decision based on that. I'd just like to echo the concerns about quality of education, especially when you consider a class, as we've reviewed at other meetings, when you have a class of, say, 20 kids that are in person, getting the in-person experience versus 4 that are remote, and getting equal, one-on-one time, if you will, or equal teacher time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Sherry. Go back to Sherry.
Can I just have a quick clarification on dates? I feel like at the beginning of this conversation, we were told that you were going to expect a firm answer from parents by the 22nd because we needed solid time for bus changes, et cetera, and for setting up the classrooms. Yet when you just mentioned that Mike said that we were going to have all the information by our meeting on the 29th, and you said that they'd be able to change their mind until then. So can you clarify?
Sure, Sherry, I apologize. So we need to send out the information to families in reference to what C is going to look like for them by this week. I mean, that's what has to happen because, again, we need this information by the 22nd. A full plan presentation to school committee will happen on the 29th.
Okay, so final decisions are being made by the 22nd.
Yeah, because again, what will happen is if we run into an issue and it's really busing and in person, and what DESE actually within the guidance says, it literally puts it out there, 4 to 6 weeks of change time. So we will not say to a family, sorry, you're remote, you can't be in person, but it's going to take a while to be able to do that, transportation wise. Classroom wise, spacing wise, all of those types of things. So I have to take that into consideration, but we do need to have a defined time frame for then establishing routes and classes and stuff.
Any other questions or comments regarding the return to school plan? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda. Unfinished business. We don't have any unfinished business. Number 6, the secretary's report. Without objection, I suggest we hold the executive session meeting minutes until our next executive session, which will be tentatively scheduled on March 29th. without objection, rather, I would take items H and I, approval of 1359 regular meeting school minutes and approval of 332 special meeting held on March 1st and March 8th, respectively. Without objection, I would accept those under anonymous consent. Those meetings, meeting minutes are accepted. Item 7, Treasurer's Reports, Financial Statements. There. Bob, did you have something?
I do. The March 1st meeting, I was absent. And so I'm abstaining.
Okay.
And that's not reflected in the minutes. It says I was present.
So, Randy, can we make that modification to the March 1 minutes?
Yes.
No
Thank you.
objection to making the modification. Will any other objections or modifications? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Treasury report, financial statements. There's nothing here indicated specifically from Director Deedy. Committee reports, management subcommittee. Quick update: management subcommittee met on, I guess it was this past Thursday. We discussed this process a bit. We discussed plans for assessment, systematic assessment of student learning and the impact of student learning for this year. And we will be meeting again also regarding district indicators and update on the strategic plan. And we'll be meeting again on, I believe it's April 1st, Thursday, April 1st. Moving on to committee report updates from Education Subcommittee.
We'll have Vice Chair Linda Longbelio report. I wasn't at the last meeting she chaired.
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
I actually had forgotten that I had chaired that meeting. If you could actually go to a different report and I'll look back at my notes as to what we did, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
No problem. So we'll go to business finance.
And so we last met on March 2nd. For the most part, we talked about the upcoming budget, save for 2 items. We talked about both the cafeteria and the athletics revolving accounts and the status of those. In terms particularly of cafeteria, that's been a challenging, evolving account, which will continue, I'm sure, to evolve as more kids come back into the school. There's been fewer kids picking up lunches than one might have anticipated. So Ms. Barton and Mr. Deedy have had to adjust on the fly there. We don't have the next meeting scheduled, but Randy will need to set that up if we can get that on the books.
Thank you, Ken. Moving on to legal affairs. I think Scott is left.
I don't see Scott on here. So we had our last meeting on Wednesday the 10th. We reviewed legal bills, approved some minutes, and then we jumped into executive session talking about various negotiations that we've got. I don't believe we have a schedule. We have a firm date for our next legal affairs, but we were talking maybe about the 24th, so next week.
Thank you. Superintendent goals.
Thanks, Mike. We're meeting a week from this evening on the 22nd. We will be outlining the agenda as we move forward in terms of completing the evaluation. So what that schedule of events looks like for this committee. I think one thing that you all can look forward to is a little more definition in terms of how the rubric will be measured by each of us to maintain consistency. So when there is the aggregate, which is the output of the evaluation, that we're all looking at the evaluation from the same level of how we're interpreting that rubric. So more to come on that. Meeting is next week, and we'll report back to the full committee afterwards.
Thank you, Matt. Facilities and security.
We haven't met since our last full school committee meeting, but we are planning to meet on the 25th at 6:30. Then we're hoping to squeeze in I'm looking to schedule another meeting shortly thereafter for some of the more administrative aspects, since I assume the 25th is going to be mostly about reopening again. So that's it.
Thank you. Diversity, equity, and anti-racism.
We met on the 23rd and we started discussing the policy, and I believe that was called Promoting Civil Rights and Prohibiting Harassment, Discrimination, and Hate Crime. A lot to discuss, and we're continuing discussing that.
Thank you.
And I believe in our next meeting, just as an update, I believe in our next meeting, Daryl is going to join us.
Yes, I will be.
Sounds good. I'm done.
All right. Audit advisory, Ben?
Yeah, we have not met for this year yet. We're waiting for the at least the initial report from our auditor. So I'll work with Dan on trying to figure out when that will be ready and get the group together.
Okay. Going back to education, Linda.
Yes.
Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I am. We discussed the technology plan and the textbook plan. Reviewed a little bit about class sizes and district indicators, and our next meeting is next Monday, the 22nd.
Great, thank you. And then going back, business finance. So Ken, there was a question from member Gustafson on the election of a vice chair for business finance.
Yeah, she is. We elected her as vice chair, member Gustafson. So congratulations.
It's just to make sure it's
Was she there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Oh.
was silent the least amount of time, apparently. So yes.
And a fine vice chair she will be.
It's
There you
only
go,
for 3
absolutely.
months. Just don't go on any business trips, Ken.
All right, good stuff. So moving on to ad hoc subcommittees. Ad hoc subcommittee to review the regional agreement. Back to you, Ken.
Yes, so we met as a committee and we elected a vice chair. Oh my goodness, this is bad. I want to say that it was Ben. Anyhow, we have a plan. So we communicated to the towns that we would have a virtual public hearing on April the 8th. We asked them for written input by that date if they so desired. We communicated that to the town managers, the chair of the boards of select persons, and the chairs of the finance committees. We will then we also have asked administration for their input about things they might like to see. This will then be a topic for discussion at the school committee meeting on April 12th. The subcommittee will get back together on the 14th to process all this information and see if any changes are warranted. And if so, we've asked the towns, if possible, to put a placeholder warrant on their town meetings. If not, it would require a special town meeting to make any changes to the regional agreement. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Thank you, Ken. It looks like Bob, you have a question through the chair about regional.
No, it's not a question. I'm just putting my input in before I check out here. Having been on 3 of those committees previously, again, I'd argue, having extensively looked at a lot of data, that both Paxton and Princeton still have 2 members. And the idea of going to sort of weighted voting, which is the only other alternative, is very labor intensive, and in terms of Paxton and Princeton, if you have 1 member that's out, and then if you go down to 1 member, and that 1 member is out, it creates a severe problem for both of those towns. It's really a problem. And so I would advocate strongly that you continue a similar sort of situation where those towns have at least their 2 members. It's sort of a senatorial model if you want something that's analogous. So I'm just putting my 2 cents in. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, and you'll have an opportunity, and every other member will have an opportunity to weigh in on the regional agreement. We take it up in depth, either at public hearing, but certainly through our meeting on April 12th. Nothing else. We'll move on to building committees. There's nothing under building committees. School council reports. Does anyone have a school council report that they wish to provide? Let's see. I have Linda, and then Ken. Linda Woodland.
So the ECC Simco met. I think it was last week, and we talked about how the ECC has gone through some kind of rebuilding, if you will, for after I don't know if you recall, before the holidays, there were a lot of infections, a lot of shutdowns that had to happen. So there was some opportunities that they took to kind of bring everybody back together. And everything so far that they've been in full reopening has been going smoothly. And so hopefully I'm not jinxing it by announcing that. We talked about the school improvement plan, going over responding to student learning needs, acting upon student learning data, some facilities adjustments, and expanding community engagement for the families. And then we also talked about the Special Olympics that are coming up and the question of delaying it so that perhaps it can be in person for the preschool or to do virtual. And so that's what's been going on at the ECC. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, so briefly at the high school, we had a useful conversation about the experiences of the students who are currently in hybrid and the percentage discussion about why the percentages perhaps are what they are. We talked about some of the strategies and challenges and possible solutions to those challenges of re-entering into the high school. And our next Simco meeting, I think it's going to be only the 6th or the 13th of April, and the Simco plans to take a tour so that we can see some of the factors that might allow students to be coming back in person.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on student council reports? Seeing none, we'll move to the second public hearing. I don't see that anyone has signed up. Randy or Barry, is other different information?
Nope.
Okay. Next item under new business. Does any member have items for new business that they would like for us to take up at a future school committee meeting? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Randy, can you call a roll?
Okay. Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Yes.
Member Brown?
I think he's left.
Member Gustafson?
Yes.
Member Haber?
Yes.
Member Ember?
Yes.
Member Knowlton?
Knowlton, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longley?
Longwheel, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Mitchell?
Mitchell, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Pantos?
Pantos, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Sullivan?
Sullivan, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
Chair Dennis?
Dennis, yes. Our meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.